This is a Rogue Media Network podcast.
Do you ever have a story that you just can't get out of your head?
One that you play the details of over and over with your friends?
Well, you've come to the right place. I'm Claire.
And I'm Susan.
And this is Justice Pending,
a weekly true crime podcast where we discuss tantalizing crimes with more questions than answers.
Hello, Abilene. Thank you so much. This is really exciting. Well, thank you so much for joining us for the Texas Justice Tour live from Abilene. Thank you to Arlene and 7-in-1 Books for being our host tonight. This is an excellent venue, and I'm so honored to be here. So thank you, Arlene.
You're welcome. Thanks for being here.
Get it, Arlene.
Yeah. So tonight we are talking about the case against Brandon Woodruff. Brandon was an ACU student back in 2005 when his parents were brutally murdered in the Dallas area in a city named Royce City, actually. And this was a case that I had researched for years when I was working at CBS News for 48 Hours. And it was one of those cases that I got so deep into. I talked to all the key players. I talked to many sources off the record. I had inside information. And then CBS decided not to do the story, Arlene. Yeah. So ABC 2020 did it, actually. Story of my life. I do have a book called Killer Story, The Truth Behind True Crime Television, where I talk about the battle royale between all three networks with their true crime shows: CBS 48 Hours, Dateline, NBC, and ABC's 2020. Y'all, we do not fight fair, and we're always competing over the same major cases. So this was one of those where I didn't get to tell this story, Arlene, but I have so much information and so many opinions too.
I've already gone down a rabbit hole. You guys, I bought like a briefing this week and started reading, and I was trying to say to myself, you are not an expert. You stack books on shelves. But I was like 3 sentences in. I was like, no, wait, there's not enough evidence. This guy, and I was like, Netflix, BritBox.
Yes, you really can go down the rabbit hole in this one. So let me set the scene for you. It is fall 2005, October. Brandon is 19 years old. He is a freshman at ACU, and he's visiting his parents at home in Royce City for the weekend. So he's there. They have recently gotten some land, and they are living out in a mobile home on a couple of acres. They have just this really nice property. Eventually, they want to build like a retirement home on it. But that's where the family scene is. And so Brandon is home that weekend, and it's, by Sunday night, they're having Domino's pizza just at the house, very low key. And he says that's the last time he saw his parents, whenever they had this pizza, and then he left to go out with his friends that night before heading back to ACU. So, first blush, it just sounds like a normal Sunday night family dinner, right, Arlene?
I think so.
Yeah.
I got pause.
Sure. I mean, we've all kind of done it, right? You come home from college, you do the laundry, you say hi, mom and dad. And so it seemed, at least from outside perspectives, this was a normal weekend. And like many Sunday nights, the Woodruff family is fielding lots of calls from other relatives. So Dennis and Norma, those are Brandon's parents, they are talking to their own parents. They're talking to siblings. There's a call log that goes up until about 9 p.m. where they are receiving calls and people can verify that they were alive. But then after 9 p.m., they're not answering their phone anymore. And one of those key phone calls comes from their daughter, Charla. So she was just 1 year older than Brandon. They're only a year apart, 19 and 20. She's also a college student. And that weekend, she had visited her grandmother and had spoken to her parents through her grandmother when she was there, and then said, I'm going to give you a call whenever I get to my apartment, my college apartment. I think we've all done that too, like the check-in call to make sure that you got there safe, right? So yeah, it sounds all very innocent, right? But it ends up being her alibi for why she couldn't be the one to have killed her own parents, right? Because at 9 o'clock, she's at grandma's, and this is a good distance away. I believe it was Texarkana where her grandmother was. And so then she goes to her own college apartment, which was actually in Arkansas, and she gets there around 11. And she had told her parents, I'm going to call you when I get home. And I mean, I'm a parent, right? I remember telling my own parents, I'll call you, when I get somewhere, and they're going to stay up for that call. Right, Arlene?
Was that a cell phone?
So it was actually not. It was her landline. Yeah, landline from her apartment. So it's 2005. People have cell phones, but they're not ubiquitous like they are today. And most people still have landlines at home, even if they have a cell phone back then. So she gets to her apartment and she places the call to mom and dad about 11 o'clock. And very uncharacteristically, there's no answer. So suspicion starts to build, right? She thinks, maybe mom and dad just fell asleep watching TV. They don't answer the phone. So she just leaves this message. She says that she's back at her apartment. She was just calling to let them know and, tell them good night. She loves them. And that's that. The next day is Monday, right? So Brandon actually makes it to class at ACU, which I think is quite admirable. Yeah. Because he's out partying with his friends until 2 a.m. in Dallas. And then he makes the drive to his dorm. And then he makes it to class, I think like around 9 a.m. he makes it to class. And he goes to multiple classes that day. He's seen in class and he's seen on campus. And he can't get a hold of his parents either, Arlene.
Okay. So the quick clarification.
Yeah.
The partying Dallas thing.
Yep.
Was that at somebody's house?
No. So he met up with some friends and they went to this club that was called Station 4, I think, or maybe Station 3. There's an S3, S4, something like that. I was not part of the club scene, so I couldn't really tell you, but he was out with his friends at a club. Multiple witnesses talk about being out with him that night, and we'll go into more detail about Brandon's timeline and what he says he was doing and what his friends observed that night, because it is up for debate, and people have different perspectives. Everyone has their own memory of any given day, any given night, and their own perception of how people behave and what might be behind certain activities. So Brandon is at this club with his friends in Dallas and then goes to ACU. It's now Monday, and no one can get a hold of mom and dad. So Monday comes and goes, and the calls are getting more frantic. Remember, Brandon and his sister Charla, they don't live anywhere near mom and dad anymore. So it's not as simple as just going down the road. They're college students. They have classes and they've just seen their parents and just spoken to them. So it's not an immediate alarm. But by Tuesday, it's gotten serious. And they actually reach out to their parents' employers. They were both still working at the time, and say, has anyone heard from, my mom? Has anyone heard from my dad? And the eerie response is, no, they didn't come into work. So are you starting to get really concerned now, Arlene?
Do we know? I am such a baby. You have no idea. Do we know how frequently they talk to their parents on a regular?
So it was not that they would normally talk to them throughout the week, but it was that no one... Right. They'd made the trip home, and then the sister cannot talk to her parents when she's supposed to say, hey, I'm home safe. Good night. Love you. And so she has that uneasy feeling. Brandon, he says, we had pizza. I said bye. I left for college. He's not trying to check in with anybody, right? He's out living his life. But it's his sister, Charla, who's like, no, this is weird. Mom and dad would have called me back. And that's what really gets the cavalry out there. And so once they talk to their employers, they determine they haven't been to work. People are frantic. And they've recently moved. So they don't have the normal neighbors that they've known. And they're living out in the country. So there's not an actual neighbor. There's not a next door neighbor. And so they reach out to a friend who agrees that he will go out to the property and knock on the door, gain entry. And when he gets there, Arlene, he's going to have to do a lot more than knock on the door. Yeah, I know. She's getting nervous. I'll keep it PG for you, but
I'll read the stuff.
So he knocks on the door, no one answers. He tries the door, it's locked. And he calls, back the family and says, if you want me to get in here, I'm going to have to make entry into this house. And so they tell him, do whatever you need to do, but get inside that house. So he actually pries a screen off of a window and is able to get inside the house through a window. Climbs inside, and it's completely quiet, completely still. And he says he gets just this really bad feeling, calls out their names, hasn't heard anything. He's seen their cars in the driveway. So he knows that they're likely inside and unresponsive in some way. And so he ultimately discovers their lifeless bodies on the couch, right in front of the pizza box and the makeshift dining room table, which was just a moving box. And it is a horrific scene. They have not died of natural causes. They have been brutally murdered. And it happened a while ago, Arlene. So he does what anyone would do. He calls 911. He says, there's been a murder. You need to get here. And authorities race to the scene. They call the Hunt County Sheriff's Department, and they quickly realize we're in over our heads here. This is a double homicide, maybe a murder-suicide, and we need the best of the best. So, do you know who they call in, Arlene? The Texas Rangers, right? Who do you call when all hope is lost, when you need some serious investigators? When you're in Texas, you call the Rangers. So they send out a crime scene unit to process the house. And I'm a big fan of the Rangers. I have a show out right now on HBO Max called Killer Confessions: Case Files of a Texas Ranger. And it is looking at cases where the killers actually confess to the murders and usually will lead the Texas Ranger to the bodies, which I love because you got to know they did it, right? Who would know where these bodies are that no one has been able to find but the killer? So it's nice to have that kind of ironclad evidence. But the Rangers in this case, it's Jeffrey Collins, who's a sergeant ranger, a seasoned ranger, and he actually has what I would call probably an unorthodox idea, Arlene, where he says we should videotape this crime scene exactly as we discover it in the pitch dark blackness. So they will not turn on any lights. I mean, I understand preserving a crime scene. I get that. But the light switch, I would make an exception for that, Arlene.
You're crazy.
I know. And unfortunately, for the evidence in this case, they did not make that decision. So they use flashlights and they go throughout the house. I know it's bizarre. And I've seen the video. So they go throughout the house with flashlights, room to room, to record it as it was, not to alter it by flipping on a light. And so there's, people who walk through things and they kick things over. And I mean, like anyone would in the dark, right? And this is also a house that they were in the process of moving into. So it was untidy. It was Very strange. So there's no question that the crime scene itself gets disturbed, not only by the family friend who broke into the house. Just PSA. That's some loud AC.
I'm so sorry.
Just PSA, if you ever are worried about a family member or friend, you can do a welfare check by calling the local authorities and say, I haven't heard from this person, and they will gain entry to the house, and they will do it in a way that hopefully, they're monitoring with body cameras and things and really preserve the scene. But unfortunately, they didn't know that. And so this family friend just busts into the house, right? Better than nothing, but not ideal. So we have the family friend who's busted into the house, and then we have the Rangers deciding to videotape the crime scene in the dark. So got a couple of challenges just right out of the gate, Arlene.
Why did nobody challenge the decision to videotape in the dark?
Great question. I think because it was a Texas Ranger who said this is how it should be done. I think they probably deferred. Local law enforcement was like, this must be how they do it, So I've never seen that happen before. Definitely never seen the let's videotape this in the dark. And it was 9 p.m. and they're out in the country. So there's not like even ambient light. So very unusual. So with this crime scene, they discover a couple of key things. One of them is that Norma and Dennis, this couple, they have been not only shot, but also stabbed. It is extremely up close and personal, and they actually don't appear to have a lot of defensive wounds. It looks like this was someone that they trusted, that they believed had a right to be in their home. There's no sign that they were trying to run out the door or trying to, put up any kind of defense. So from a law enforcement perspective, they're looking at this as a close, intimate person who would have done this to the family. And so they look at the people closest to Dennis and Norma. And their first stop are their two children. And so that is, those are the first people that they speak to. And in speaking to Charla, they get her alibi. They confirm it. They feel pretty good about where they are with Charla, even though she was forthcoming about some challenges she'd had with her parents in the past, particularly her father, some difficulties she'd had growing up, some instances of violence allegations she'd made. And still, they feel like, despite all of that, the timeline, it really couldn't be Charla. She can't be two places at once, Arlene.
Did they check the mileage on her car?
So I'm not sure that they did, but they do have the grandmother in Texarkana who says that she was there with her and that they spoke to, and they have the phone records where she's made the phone call.
Back in college and
So it's a pretty tight timeline. I don't know if they checked the mileage on the car, but the fact that she had multiple data points and phone calls and other alibi witnesses, it makes it pretty difficult to see how she could have done this. But Brandon, so that's another story. He has been with friends, and he says that he met his friends around 9 p.m. So that timing would have actually lined up with one of the phone calls that his parents had had with a relative. So if that were an accurate remembering of his night, then you would think that Brandon would have almost as strong of an alibi as his sister. But unfortunately, whenever they checked with the friends, because he gave a list of friends that I was with this guy, and here's their cell phone number, you can get in touch with them. When they reached out to these friends, they said, oh yeah, we were with Brandon that night. Yeah, we met up about 11 p.m. And the police are like, record scratch. This is a key difference. This is a 2-hour window, and not just any 2-hour window, Arlene, but a 2-hour window when they believe that his parents were murdered in their own home. So it's starting to look bad for Brandon, right? Not only that, but they speak to his friends and they say, what do you remember about that night? What do you remember about Brandon? And they said, it was really weird. Whenever we met up with him at 11, he was dripping wet. And he wasn't wearing shoes, and he didn't have a shirt on. And it was like he'd just gotten out of the shower. And also he was wearing sunglasses in the middle of the night. What do you make of that, Arlene?
I just don't want it to be true.
I know.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what to make of it.
I don't want it to be true either. I love a good wrongful conviction. I would love for this to be a wrongful conviction, as many people believe that it is. For me, for my cold, dark, true crime producer heart, I have to say that it's looking pretty bad for Brandon. So the sunglasses, to me, say that he was crying, that he was emotional, that he was having a difficult time. I don't know why you wear sunglasses at night if you're not trying to hide your eyes. I don't know what other reason. Maybe, his eyes are bloodshot from other activities, but he's with his friends. Would they really care? It's suspicious. And then the idea that he doesn't have a shirt, he doesn't have shoes, and they're about to go clubbing. So he's having to borrow clothes from people. At one point, this was a definite moment where I was like, oh my gosh, why didn't they follow through? He is talking about how he doesn't have, clothes and whatever. And they're like, well, your bag's right here, your overnight bag, because he had come from college. And they go to basically unzip it or whatever. And according to the report, he freaks out. He goes nuts on them. Do not touch my bag. Do not get into my bag. It's a non-starter. No, everyone just leaves him alone. And
Yeah, I didn't read that part.
yeah. So these are some of the things that I have access to, Arlene. Yeah. So the bag, and this mystery bag that no one is able to look into, no one gets into. I mean, the clothes that whoever the killer is, bloody clothes, they've never been found. The murder weapon's never been found. So what was in that bag, Arlene? I know. I wish we knew. But it's a big question mark, and it doesn't look good for Brandon to have this bag that he freaks out when anyone mentions and won't let anyone inside. The next time he ends up at the police department, which is, after Tuesday, his parents are found. He's told that his parents have died. I believe it was the next day that he travels and gets to Hunt County and shows up at the sheriff's office to speak to investigators. Y'all, he's not wearing shoes. Once again, he's not wearing shoes. He's just in his socks. It's like, where are these guys' shoes? It's very suspicious. And I have to say, in covering lots of crime scenes and crime cases and murder scenes, the shoes usually get bloody, Arlene.
Okay, but he's got other shoes at college.
Yeah. Why didn't he wear them? I don't know. I don't know why he shows up without shoes on multiple occasions surrounding the death of his parents, and it gets brought up. Maybe he's just disheveled. Maybe he's like one of those hippy-dippy people. No. So it's philosophy, right? Those are the shoeless ones on campus. But no, he was actually majoring in agriculture management, right? He was an FFA in high school. He wore shoes for good reason, right? Boots usually. So it's very curious. It's one of those things that I wish I had a good answer for, and instead it's just a question mark. So let's talk more about the other people in this investigation. In addition to Sharla, the sister, and Brandon, the son, there were also some friends of Brandon that got wrapped up in this investigation, partially through their own calls to the Hunt County Sheriff's Department. So after the news that Brandon's parents, Dennis and Norma Woodruff, have been found dead, the phone starts lighting up. People are calling in with tips and information. And in cases like this, where the police are left without any DNA evidence at the scene, it's kind of like a gift to have these phone calls, to have people call and say, I have information, or I think I have information. But it can also be a lot of wild goose chases, Arlene. people who just want to insert themselves into the investigation for whatever reason. We don't know, but people start calling. One of the first calls that they get is actually a woman who says, I heard that there was a shooting, and I heard that there was a large caliber gun, used. And I have to tell you that my .45 caliber is missing from my house.
And this person who called was
Brandon's girlfriend's mother. Yes. So she calls just days after the murder and says, I can't find my gun. It used to be on a shelf. I had, like we do, right? In Texas, we just keep our guns out on the shelf in the living room. So it was out on a shelf. I'm tongue in cheek. Mine's in a safe, y'all. I do have one, but it is in a safe. So they have just kept it out. It was kind of an older gun, and they thought it looked cool, and it was like on display in their home along with the ammunition and an ammo clip and everything. And so not only is the gun missing, but multiple bullets are missing. So the authorities are very interested in this information, Arlene, as you might imagine. And they say, well, when was the last time Brandon was at your house? And they were like, the day before the murder. Now, he wasn't the only one there. It was many of his friends. It was his girlfriend invited a bunch of her, high school friends that happened to all be in town that weekend. And they were all over at the house. And the gun went missing and nobody realized it until after the murder. So the timing is really suspicious. And the authorities say, bring us the rest of that ammo. We have some spent shell casings from the scene, and we want to compare it and see if we feel like it could be compatible. So they bring up the ammo, they compare it to the spent shells, and they think that it looks like the same type of weapon that was used. It's not 100% match. They just still don't have the gun, so they can't fire. This is what ballistics experts will do. If they have the gun and they have the spent shell casing, then they will fire additional bullets, do test rounds, and then compare the markings and say this came from the same gun with, a high degree of certainty. But unfortunately, they still don't have the gun. So they're only able to say it's likely, it could be the same. So now they have the gun, likely. They have Brandon's access to it. They have a date ahead of the murder, one day. And they have, it's Brandon's girlfriend. It's a close, they have her mom calling and saying, I hate to say this because she actually loved Brandon and felt like he was a sweet guy. And she's, conflicted in this call. She says, I hate to say this, but I have to tell you that Brandon was at my house, the day before the murder of his parents. And this gun is missing. And so whenever the Texas Rangers question Brandon, which he comes in willingly, shoeless, and says, I'll talk to you. I'll talk to you about anything you want. I'll talk to you as long as you want. I'll give you my DNA. He's forthcoming. He appears to be very much cooperative and adamant that he had nothing to do with the death of his parents, that he has no reason to kill them, that he would gain nothing, that he never wanted them dead, that they were close. And the Texas Rangers really start attacking that story. And not only do they bring up allegations about Brandon having disagreements with his parents, they actually are able to discover that he's been failing his classes at ACU. It's freshman year, it can happen to anybody, but it was something that was a point of contention between him and his parents, and he's not forthcoming to the police about that, right? They have a great relationship. Everything's great. I have nothing to hide, no problems. And then when the police find out, well, actually, he was failing almost all of his classes. And his parents had told him, other relatives knew this, that if he didn't get his grades up, that they were going to yank him back home. He was going to go to community college. He was going to be living with mom and dad again. And, that's not an ideal situation for anybody, Arlene.
How common is it for a perpetrator of a crime like that
Yeah.
to be a willing participant in DNA testing and going in?
Yeah, it's a
I
great,
think,
great question.
Isn't that a common behavior of people who think that they are above
It's true.
narcissists?
It
whatever?
you can look at it two ways. You can look at it as though I have nothing to hide and I'm willing to give my DNA because I know that I'm not responsible for this crime, or you can say I'm untouchable and I'm going to bend over backwards and say, sure, take my DNA. And Brandon actually says, well, I know. I mean, it's my parents' house. Like, of course my DNA's there. And the authorities are like, well, we'll use it, just to exclude you, because if there's any unknown DNA, then we'll know that it can't be yours, right? It would actually be great for Brandon if there was unknown DNA in the house. But unfortunately, it's just familial DNA that's found. So yeah, it's gets very interesting, gets very heated in the interrogation, goes on for hours. And a big point of contention starts to come out around the fact that the club that Brandon was going to was known as a gay club. And this is information that Brandon had not shared with many people. And it was something that the law enforcement believed was a double life, that he was lying to his parents about his sexuality. He was going to Abilene Christian University and had a girlfriend. But actually behind the scenes, he was going to these clubs. He had engaged in lots of activities with other men, and it was well known that was part of his life. It was well known, but he was not out, right? It was only known in that community. And so it's something that the authorities really hammer as a lie. They really hammer it as he's hiding something. And I will have to say, from watching that interrogation, it is extremely uncomfortable to watch the way they wield his sexuality as something that is to be ashamed of and is something that makes him potentially culpable in a murder. It really has no place in the investigation, in my opinion.
And that's why I'm so fiercely wanting to protect it.
Yeah. I know. It's a complicated case, and I have complicated feelings about it because on the one hand, it's infuriating that they would bring his sexuality into the investigation when it really doesn't have anything to do with the timeline, with the circumstantial evidence, the fact that it was a gay club. So what? What if it was a club for, crossword puzzles? What if it was a club for, any kind of thing? What if it's a club for, I don't know. It doesn't matter what the club's for. It matters that he lied about what time he went to the club, right? And so the idea that his sexuality becomes a component of the investigation cannot be denied. It definitely becomes part of the case against him. And when, it's just a few days later, he goes back to college, and it's just a few days later that he's arrested and charged with the capital murder of his parents. They don't have the gun. They, at that time, don't have the knife, but they have this circumstantial evidence against Brandon and really against no one else. He is the lead suspect and truly the only real suspect.
But no hard evidence.
Yeah, so Brandon points out who he believes could be responsible for this. He points the finger at several people in his circle who were also at his girlfriend's house when that gun went missing. He talks about a friend that he had gone to high school with, that they'd been like frenemies. All right, frenemy. You think you're friends, and then they stab you in the back, and, all that kind of thing. They want what you have. There's, lots of competition. And this was the case with Brandon and this high school friend. And this was something that he said, could have possibly been a motive for murder. It's kind of a bridge too far for me. I mean, We've all had the mean, the frenemy, the mean girl in high school, but do you kill their parents? That's usually not, right? You don't really hear about that. This would be a first, I think. So he ends up pointing the finger at his friend. Police, to their credit, call the guy in. They say, hey, let's talk about where you were Sunday night. And he has an alibi that he's with his girlfriend. They check his cell phone records. He's at her house, right? So there was an effort to look at other people, and nothing pointed at them other than Brandon saying, well, they had a grudge against me. They wanted to hurt me. And he pointed out some weird things that had happened with some animals on their property, that these animals had died and that they believed that they'd been poisoned. And Brandon, I think I mentioned, was in Future Farmers of America, and so was this friend. And he felt like this friend had reason to poison his animals. I mean, anytime people are talking about hurting animals, it gets dark, right? This is a dark person. Obviously, they've killed, 2 people, and killing animals would be nothing to them. But I think as good folk here, it's pretty disturbing, right? Yeah. So it's a very unsettling story any way you spin it. But Brandon's family really divides. And there are those who believe in Brandon's innocence and think that he's being railroaded for being gay. And there are others, like his sister, who begrudgingly say, I think my brother did it. I think he killed our parents. And the motive, it's a tale as old as time, Arlene. The reason people kill people, it's usually not very complicated. It's usually love or money. And in this case, the motive would have been financial. With Brandon, you look at the fact that it's not a lot of money, right? I mean, I've seen people kill each other over $10, but it's never really logical. But for Brandon, the idea that he was struggling in college, they were about to pull his tuition, they were not going to pay his way anymore, and this was a way, if you follow the state's theory of the case, that he would have access to their money. He would be their beneficiary with his sister, but still, half of an estate is half of an estate. And not only that, Arlene, but the night of their murders, Brandon is driving a beat-up used car, like we've all driven, right? In our youth. The family car, the old car, the hand-me-down, he's driving that car when he goes to visit his parents. But when he drives back up to ACU, he's driving mom and dad's new truck.
Okay, I didn't know that either.
Yeah, I know.
Oh my God.
It's troubling. I wish he wasn't driving mom and dad's new truck, right? I wish he wasn't doing that, but he is. And I mean, people have killed for a lot less. So Brandon goes to trial. He maintains his innocence. He gives multiple interviews to the media, proudly proclaiming that he is an innocent man, that he has nothing to do with this murder. And he maintains his innocence throughout the entire trial. He does not take the stand, but he does say that he's innocent. He does, assert his rights to not take the stand. And he ultimately is found guilty by a jury in Hunt County. There's no cameras in the courtroom, so that's why you haven't seen it. But he does get a guilty verdict, and he is sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. It's a capital murder. What happened to his parents is capital murder. And he could have been eligible for the death penalty, but the state of Texas did not pursue it. He was only 19 at the time. He has no prior records. I mean, you want to look at the innocent side of this, the argument that he couldn't have done this, that he wouldn't have done this. And his profile really is not that of a killer. He has been, a very clean-nosed kid, right? He didn't get in a lot of trouble. He had his, minor mischief. To go from that to killing your parents, it really does boggle the mind. But he has been in prison since 2009. He has given most recently an interview to ABC's 2020, where he said, I'm gonna read you the quote because I thought the quote was interesting. He said, "I'm innocent. I did not kill my parents at all. I think you should look at the totality of the evidence." I'm not one to say that there's certain words that make you definitely guilty, but I did find that phrasing curious. And I watched it myself to make sure that that was the exact clip. I did not kill my parents at all. That, to me, I was like, all right, just a little. You didn't kill them a little. You didn't kill them at all. I have a son. I know when he tells me, "Oh, I honestly did not do that, Mom, at all." You probably did it, right? It's like a little too much protesting there. So it was a little suspicious for me, but he said it a lot of different ways, to be fair. Over the years, he's talked about his innocence so many times that maybe he's just blue in the face about it, right? And it just came out that way on national television. But, to this day, he has exhausted all of his appeals currently, Arlene. He has taken his case to the Innocence Project, and they are currently looking at it. The Texas Innocence Project has said that they will review all the evidence, that they want to know, in cases where there's no DNA, and there is no DNA in this case. Ultimately, they found a dagger at his parents' house, at the second house that they had. Remember how they had moved to the mobile home and they had a previous home? So whenever they were going through just everything in that house, they ended up finding this really interesting dagger that at one point the state said was purchased at medieval times. Medieval times is like, no way, he did not buy it from us, y'all. They will not say that was purchased there, but it does look medieval. It's I should have brought a picture, but it's very unusual looking dagger, and believe it or not, his father's blood, a trace of his father's blood was found on that dagger. And Brandon's roommate said he remembered Brandon having that dagger in college in their dorm room because he was like, proud of it, right? It was like his cool sword type dagger thing. The defense fought this so hard. They say that's not even the murder weapon. It's, they had a whole story for why his dad's blood was on it, that he'd like pricked his finger. I mean, it gets elaborate, but they do have a story. And they had their own forensic expert that said this size blade did not make the wounds, even though the knife that killed, Dennis and Norma, that was used to stab them repeatedly, it was not like a kitchen knife. Like, there's nothing in the house that matches, and the size of the blade is kind of hard to know, but it doesn't match up with a regular kitchen knife. So this like mysterious dagger that shows up, it's hard for me to believe it's not related in any way, but it's never really been proven that it is. And then this .45 caliber pistol still missing. I do have a source on this, Arlene. A source who recently told me that they have found a .45 caliber pistol in the Hunt County area that someone had called, and this happens more than you would believe. Years go by, and people are developing land, they're farming, they're doing whatever, and they find old guns. And if you ever do this, call the police, because it might have been used in a murder. And you don't want to keep that at your house, right? So they did the right thing. They called the police, and they said, hey, we found this gun, and it got logged. And through the Texas Innocence Project, looking at all possible pieces of evidence that could exist, that could be tested, they have this gun now. So that's a ray of hope. It's a ray of hope that this gun could be the one that killed Dennis and Norma, and they could get some type of forensics off of it. Something else that's never been able to be tested, potential evidence, is Norma. So Brandon's mother had long blonde hairs in her hands. Yeah. So weird, right? Long blonde hairs in her hands when she's found dead. But the way that they're in her hands, they don't have the root of the hair. So it's like, how are they, just like your hair breaks off here, you need the root to get DNA testing. At least in 2005 you did. And I believe like in 2019, when I was looking into this, they hadn't found a way to test that hair yet. But that is something that today the Texas Innocence Project is trying to figure out a way to test that hair. Now, I will tell you, someone who had long blonde hair at the time was Brandon and his sister Charla. They both have naturally blonde hair, and he was wearing it long. Who could it belong to, right? Them? Someone else? Could it be like hair that was like in the house on the couch? And, it's weird. You can even see it in the crime scene photos. It's so bizarre, but they haven't been able to pull a profile from it. So as we sit here today, we have a man in prison for the rest of his life who went to prison at 19. And that, is a pretty awful fate, no matter what. And he says he's innocent. And we have a family divided who, have taken sides, and some believe in his innocence and are bankrolling his defense. And others think, like, his sister, who's actually was a criminal justice major and has gone on to a career in law enforcement, thinks that her brother did it. So I don't know, Arlene. What do you think?
So disappointed.
I know.
I think because of the sexuality piece.
Yeah.
And my background is working with college students.
Yeah.
Before the bookstore. My leaning is wanting to go, here is a broken, hurting kid who is living in shame.
Yeah.
And surely not. Like,
yeah.
And would he have killed both parents? Like, I've got questions about that.
Yeah.
And and I also, I come back to, like, that is the prime age in terms of mental health and psychosis.
Yeah.
Where somebody snaps over and there can be a mental break or a psychotic break or whatever. And so are we seeing something happen there? Not in his excuse, but is that happening? That he can then go back to school.
Yeah. And go to class.
Like everything's okay the next day. Because I've sat and watched, like, I've been looking at pictures of him.
Yeah.
And something looks off in his face.
Yeah.
And I just kind of want to protect him, but then
I know.
I'm like, poor baby. However,
I will tell you, I have struggled with this because I want him to be innocent. I want the real killer to not be Brandon. And if there's evidence of that, I would love to see it. And I think there's a line that was repeated over and over again at his trial that I think we can all agree doesn't have any place in a courtroom. And it says, if he lied about being gay, he could have lied about killing his parents. And to me, despite all of the evidence and all of the ways that I've talked about how it lines up that he is the killer, I think just the fact that prosecutors were allowed to say that in trial, I think he deserves a new trial where his sexuality is not part of the case at all, but he should have to answer for the evidence that is against him. And I think a new trial would allow him to do that. I don't think he should walk free. I don't think any of that. But I do think that given what we know about how his sexuality was wielded against him, I think a new trial is fair. And I think that the evidence could stand on its own even stronger without this, which has no place in the courtroom.
I think hearing you lay it all out, there's a lot more evidence.
Yeah.
Than when I was reading through things.
And there are lots of podcasts about this, y'all. If you're interested, I will tell you there's so many podcasts about this. And they, at least the ones that I have listened to, they take the position of he's innocent. And we're going to look at his sister. She's the real killer. We're going to look at these friends that I'm not even naming because to me, there's not a shred of evidence that they did anything other than be friends with Brandon Woodruff and his parents were murdered, and feels a little gross to me. But there's podcasts that say that his friends are guilty and they name them and first and last name and say they did it, and they really believe like could be like a group murder. It's pretty far-fetched in my opinion. I do work in true crime, so I've seen all manner of cases. And, group murders are very rare. It does happen, but it's very rare. And the idea that they would all keep silent and they frame Brandon, I mean, it gets really out there. Well, any final thoughts, Arlene?
For those of you that don't know this, Claire is staying at my house tonight.
I like that you're getting this on the record, Arlene.
Just thought I'd put that out there. She's got a lot of knowledge and skills.
Amazing. Amazing. Thank you for your trust, Arlene. Thank you. Thank you so much for coming. Justice Pending is recorded in Dallas, Texas for Rebel Studios. It's hosted by me, Claire Sanamaw, and Susan Passoni. Our theme music is Bending Truth, licensed at premiumbeat.com. We appreciate all listener feedback. Leave a review wherever you're listening right now, and we might read it on the air. Thanks for joining us.
This has been a Rogue Media Network production.